Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Swartwood here. Tonight, I am joined by a voice actor and award-winning audiobook narrator who has narrated over, and I forgot to get the several hundred audiobook
That's fine. I don't
titles,
even
including
know the
titles
number
by
at this
Brandon
point.
Sanderson, Robert Crace, John Irving, David Baldacci, Nora Roberts, just to name a few. That's right, it's your favorite narrator and mine, MacLeod Andrews. MacLeod, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Robert?
I had that noted here. I'm like, find out how many audiobooks. Do you know how many that you've done at this point?
Not really. I think Audible says 500 plus. Like a little bit ago, it said 600 plus, but then it got rid of a bunch
Sometimes
of
with
old
rights,
ones.
the
So,
titles come off. So
yeah,
that is
yeah,
something
yeah.
I've noticed some with my conversations with some narrators. I don't think people kind of realize they're like well, an Audible says this. I'm like, yeah, but sometimes depending on the rights of those titles, they disappear.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
okay,
honestly, I don't. It doesn't matter to me too much how many I've done. It's
yeah.
each one. You know.
Well, it's like I feel like your age. Sometimes when people ask me how old I am, I have to think about it. You know, you kind of like you get
Right.
past a certain point where you probably like after you hit like 100, you're probably like, okay,
Yeah.
I don't know how many I've done now. But yeah, so let's talk about this again. Thank you for making time to chat. I know you're a very busy man, having done hundreds of audiobooks and plus doing voice acting and everything else. You, I guess, right now people know you more as an audiobook narrator, but I feel like and maybe this has changed, where people maybe starting out now might be want to become an audiobook narrator because just the way the field is, there's a lot more opportunities and just it's become a huge part of just publishing. But
Yeah.
that probably was not the initial goal. I mean, like starting out, like what was the initial dream? What were you hoping to achieve? Or like, yeah, what were you going for?
Your first question is, how did things go wrong in my career?
No, 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 because clearly you have managed to become, you know what I mean? But it's the same thing too. Like I always, when I talk to writers, it's
Uh,
oftentimes like, what was, well, for that, it's a little bit different because usually writing, depending on their age or whatever else. I don't know. I just, when I talk to audiobook narrators, it always feels like, they most times they start out with acting, but sometimes
yeah,
like with Hillary Huber, that was more just voiceover type stuff.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then someone's one day suggested, "Hey, why don't you try this?" And then all of a sudden they built this great career.
yeah.
So I don't know. It's always interesting in the roundabout
No,
way how someone gets in to become like basically your level of audiobook narrator.
yeah. And sorry, I'm giving you a hard time.
Because I feel bad. I'm like, oh no, I don't want to
No,
make
no,
it
no,
sound
no,
like
not
that.
at all. Yeah, I mean, like it's true. It's like it's not the top of mind. Yes, I was an actor. I went to school, studied acting. I was doing theater in New York. Um, Actually, I think I saw Will Dameron. You did Will Dameron, an interview with Will Dameron at some point,
Yeah.
if you recall. It's the same story because me, Will Dameron, Julia Whalen, we all were classmates in college, and um, one of our classmates was the daughter of a casting coordinator at Brilliance Audio, and I was just catching up with her one day, and what have you been up to? She said, been narrating audiobooks, and I was like, really? I didn't even think you were pursuing acting. How did that happen? And she said, well, my mom works at an audiobook company, and I was like, can I talk to her about how to get started? And that was Laura Grafton, and she just sent me an audition, and I sent in my first take. She gave me some notes. I revised a little bit, and she booked me, flew me out to Michigan, which is the way that Brilliance used to do it. Um, and yeah, I slogged through the weeks, sweating bullets, and sure that I was doing an awful job, but the director assured me it's all fine, it's all part of the process, and I think that book ended up winning an award, like a library award, a YALSA award, and so that led to more trips out to Michigan until I think I had
So
like, yeah, go
what
ahead.
year was this?
I think like 2008. It was pretty much fresh out of college.
So you mentioned being in like class with Julia Whalen and Will Dameron. This was not like I don't want to say for lack of a better word, normal college, or was this acting college, or like what specifically?
Yeah, just
Like what school was
just a
this?
liberal arts college in Vermont.
Oh
Um,
wow! So
yeah,
the three of you ended up in the same kind of class.
yeah, yeah, Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So, but at that point, I mean, you had been doing, I guess, how old were you then when you decided that you wanted to get into acting? Was this something like in middle school, high school? You had been doing plays, or like at what point
Yeah.
did
I
you
mean, like,
decide this was what you wanted to pursue that?
my mom was a producer for a children's theater company in Louisville, Kentucky, where I grew up. And so I grew up seeing the plays that her company put on, and she would take us to Actors Theater of Louisville all the time. I remember like year after year, we'd go see weird plays at the Humana Festival of New American Plays, which unfortunately I think has been shuttered. Um, and so I just kind of grew up exposed to a lot of theater, and I always loved seeing it. And I did a lot of theater in middle school, weirdly. Then I got kind of burnt out on it and just kind of played soccer in high school. And then senior year of high school, somebody convinced me to try out for the school play, and I ended up uh, getting cast as the lead in that. And everyone was like, "Where did that come from?" Like, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I used to do this a lot." And they're like, "Okay." And it like the bug immediately like grabbed me again, and I was like, "Oh man, this is amazing! I love it. I love learning in a collaborative setting, which is kind of a lot what rehearsals are, kind of diving into a text and talking it out and figuring it out with a room full of people who are smarter than you." And yeah, then I went to college and knew that I wanted to study theater. Thought to myself for a hot second, like maybe I'll do neuroscience too. It ended up just being theater, and yeah, then graduated, and the school Middlebury has this program called Potomac Theater Project where they put up a play in New York City. At the time, it was in D.C. Then they moved to New York City. So you kind of like before you even graduate, you get this exposure to the theater community in New York. And I had interest from an agent coming out of college, so I just moved to New York sooner than I wanted to, or sooner than I thought I was ready. Which in hindsight's probably true, but you just kind of got to go for it when you're young. Uh, and then when did I start getting interested in voiceover? You know what? It's actually because of a video game. Was originally there was this like gothic vampire video game called Legacy of Kain with these amazing like Shakespearean actors playing doing the voice acting. Simon Templeman, Michael Ball, or is it Michael Bell? Anyway, beautiful performances, and I was like, I want to do that. It was so cool. Um, so I was kind of at that point open to. I was doing plays every once in a while, like an indie film, and like any opportunity I got to voice act, and that included audiobooks, I jumped at, and the audiobooks just really stuck. Uh,
Yeah. So, had you been aware of audiobooks at that time? And I know for the kids out there, they might not understand that listening to an audiobook years and years and years ago was a pain in the ass because it's not like right now where you can just download it onto your
Vinyl,
phone and you're good to go. I mean, literally what they would say books on tape. It used to actually just be like cassette tapes for what,
yeah.
like every hour, and then you have to take it out. And then it became CDs if you wanted to listen to an audiobook.
Mhm.
Usually for me, I would go to the library and you would get out there, but it would still be a sleeve of like, maybe like 10 discs. And at the end of, you'd finish something, chapter whatever, chapter 10 ends, please insert disc two or whatever. And
I
then
still get,
now, again, anybody has access, easy access to, and I think that's one of the reasons just the industry has really kind of blown up in terms of audiobooks
yeah,
because of that.
accessibility.
So yeah, I mean, had you been listening to, or even with video games, like were you playing the video games? Were you kind of aware that, oh, there are these voices in these video games?
Um, audiobooks, I don't think I was at the time anyway. I wasn't aware of as like a career track or path at all. I mean, I remember loving listening to stories on audio as a little kid, but I mean, it was like we had one of those like banana yellow record players with like, brightly primary colored vinyl. And I think I remember listening to somebody narrate like The Fox and the Hound as a kid. Um, uh, yeah, the short answer is no. I was not really aware or looking out for it, but I'm really fortunate that it found me.
Yeah. So do you remember that title, the very first book you had done? Do you remember the title of that book?
Yeah, it was called Crows and Cards by Joseph Helgerson. It was about this um and like that. I think it's maybe uh doesn't exist anymore. It was about like a 12-year-old in like 1840s Missouri traveling down a river with a riverboat gambler. Um, and yeah, and it had this southern accent. And I remember it was like had all these funny words in it, and I was like, "Well, Flim Flam, I'm going down the riverboat with this with Sam. Oh, I tell you what, he sure was a crazy riverboat gambler." Like really kind of like pitched up here. I was also younger then, so could probably access that a little bit more readily.
So was that the entire like the entire voice of the narrator you were doing that, or was it just for some of the dialogue?
No, that was the narrator. It was all for like first person perspective from this
Oh
12-year-old kid.
wow.
Like
So you didn't start out
very high
easy.
characters, very kind of like old fashioned storytelling. And then like the riverboat gambler was like blah, 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 like don't you give me my chips back, that sort of thing. Uh, it was
All
it was
right.
it was a silly affair.
So how did you approach that? I mean, at that point, had you kind of like listened to some other audiobooks to kind of
Nope.
understand just what was going on, or
I
did you just
approached it
really
with a
just
lot
dive
of
into
fear.
it?
No, I did the audition, which I think the first note that Laura gave me was like, bring
Bring
down the
it
fear,
down a little bit.
bring it down a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah. But it was like it was a very silly book that could hold a lot of kind of big interpretation. Um, yeah, man, I remember I like went through, poured through though. This is back when we were recording on paper. I went through and like every period, I was like, how am I going to know where to take a breath? Like when my vision is swimming, like, and I put like lines after every period so that I would know that, like, okay, take a breath here, take a breath here. Um, yeah, and I just kind of stuck with that narrator characterization and like the big characters and we just kind of chipped our way through it slowly but surely. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, sweating bullets, drinking lots of tea. Man, my voice would be shredded at the end, and I'd just go back to they put us up in like the Days Inn in Grand Haven, uh, and I'd just go straight back home, lay in bed, drink honey tea, and just try to fall asleep as fast as possible. It was so exhausting. The first ones are really taxing, then
Yeah.
eventually kind of.
So those first couple audiobooks that you had recorded, like what type of prep went into those and like how many hours were you? I mean, I guess if this was an instance where they were flying you out, they probably expected you to have a certain amount of time in the booth, as opposed to now where I'm assuming you might still go into a studio, but do you have, because as I know, like when COVID had hit, all the audiobook narrators essentially were creating their own, at-home booths. Do you have something like that?
Very similar story. Yeah, I had a booth. I have a booth made by Scott Peterson that I always had tucked away in a closet in back when my wife and I lived in like a one-bedroom apartment across town. But there was no AC, and so I never fathomed to record an audiobook from it because it would have just been miserable. Um, and I was a real holdout of being put in studios and going to studios and not recording from home because I just felt like that's not my job. My job is to act and to perform this book, and there are people who are better at the technical aspects than me, and I want to keep them in business. And but then COVID hit, and luckily we had just moved kind of out to the suburbs where we have more space and got my booth put back together. Scott came and disassembled it from the closet, moved it across town, put it back up. And yeah, COVID hit, and I was like, "Oh, all right. I'll glad I have it. I'll start recording from home." Uh, it sounds great. My clients were all like, "Your booth sounds fantastic," and I'm like, "Great." It's a very small booth, specially designed to fit in a walk-in closet. Um, So I'm kind of like, I wish I was forced to invest in something larger just so I can move around a little bit. But yeah, it's got the sound is fantastic. And so uh, yeah, now I mostly record from home, which I've got 3 kids. So it's kind of helpful to be able to just kind of like get them to school and then just come right back, throw on my shorts, grab a cup of coffee, take a nap on my couch if I need to, in the middle of like during a break. Uh, it's nice having the recording space in home, and I almost always work with an engineer coming in remotely because again, I don't view that. I know a lot of narrators offer kind of soup to nuts. We'll do the whole shebang for you, but I've always, I guess, because I remember a time when that wasn't the norm. I don't offer that. I I almost always insist on working with an engineer who will come in remotely. Um, and yeah, sometimes every once in a while, usually it's only for PRH. I'll go into the studio. But even that, a lot of times they're like, "No, your home booth's fine."
Yeah.
Which it gets lonely, I suppose. It's nice to you forget how nice it is to see other people
Yeah.
when you do those times when you do get to go out to the studio. But
Well, so right now you've done at least over like 500 plus titles. How has your prep changed from those very early books to just now when
yeah,
when you get signed on to do a new project?
yeah, way more pared back, way more pared back because it's just you've talked with enough people doing this that that kind of like, unfortunately, the business side of this is quantity, is like to make an actual career out of it and make a living. You got to have it lined up one after another, that one week, next week. I mean, like at one point, when I was sort of in the middle of my career, I was stacking them. I was doing 2-a-days. I was doing weekends. It was bananas. Um, and I remember Brilliance threw me something like on a Friday that they were like, "Hey, something happened. We lost a narrator. Can you come in and do this Monday?" And I was like, "Well, okay, but I'm not going to be prepped." And I kind of realized in that process there wasn't really a demonstrable like loss of like fidelity of my ability to perform. And I realized I was over prepping at that point, and a lot of the you know marking up your script or whatever, like it's all there, at least if something's written well, like the author almost always has given you everything you need, so I don't really mark up the script anymore. But just to make sure to cover my bases, because I'm actually kind of a slow reader, which is what makes me very good at doing this, is I'm super meticulous um, and have a very loud voice in my head. But as a stopgap, as a safety measure, I almost always hire somebody to be prepping in the background so that like while I'm recording whatever the book of the week is, somebody else is building a spreadsheet for me of of the various characters I'm going to meet, whether there's any indication that they have a like an accent of any sort, or if they're very clearly indicated to be from a particular region, a couple like notes about them, male, female, age, that sort of thing. A lot of times I won't even look at them because the text speaks for itself and you don't really need it, but it's important to me to have that so that you don't end up on page 376 with "he said" in his
Yeah.
lilting Irish brogue, and you're like, "I made him from Brooklyn."
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I think I remember
and then
hearing
what I'll do
Ray
is
Porter.
just what's that?
I said I think I remember hearing that Ray Porter is someone who just sits down and just he doesn't read ahead of time. He just looks at the page and just goes. And then that's happened before where, 5 chapters later he finds out, oh, this character that he's been doing is supposed to be Russian. And he wasn't doing a Russian accent or anything like
Right,
that.
right. And so that's why I always have somebody help me out, so that I don't end up in that circumstance, or rarely end up in that circumstance.
So do you
Um,
at least skim like okay, like say like
yeah,
right now, well, today we're in the middle of the week, but
I
say
I
you're
read
starting
as
on a
much
new
as I can.
project. What's that?
Is I read as much as I can is sort of the answer. Like I get as far as I can into it,
Yeah.
and I've always been sort of an instinctual performer and reader, and especially like with a really good author, really like in a page, sometimes in a sentence, you can get the vibe and like be like, okay, I know the point of view and I've got my approach and like we're off until unless they like suddenly shift it up and kind of throw you a curveball. Like I can develop a pretty strong take or instinct for a book like in a paragraph, like sometimes in a sentence, just kind of based on how the author is approaching it. And that just comes from, I think, a like decades, a lifetime of kind of putting text on its feet, whether it's like doing play readings again and again, where it's like you just handed a play and it's like, go perform it as if you are that character. Don't just read it, but you know, dig into it. And so it's one of those things where it's like I can't really explain it other than like I've kind of been honing my instincts for a long time. And sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you kind of like get off base. But I'd say actually I probably get more into trouble if I over intellectualize it. If I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna decide to approach it this way because here's an idea, and then like maybe I get halfway in and I'm like, these words really just don't want to be read this way. How do I how do I maybe start sliding into a different vibe, or you know, worst case scenario, go back and fix things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is also one of the things that it's like we live in the age of computers. It's all recorded digitally. Like it's not the end of the world if you have to correct something. Um,
Right. I mean, so pickups, for people who aren't aware, is usually when after you've recorded it, they might realize, oh, you may have said something wrong, or maybe there's something that has like, have you ever, so for people who aren't aware, you get hired to narrate a book. Essentially, whatever is on that page, you have to narrate. And sometimes books, I imagine, are pretty clean. They've been copy edited, whatever else, but sometimes they might be missing a word. Like if you come to a section and you realize, okay, I'm gonna have to do I'm gonna have to do a pickup at some point. Like, do you try to just do that then and there? I mean, like, how do you handle a situation
yeah,
like
I
that
mean,
where you
like I think
realize,
sometimes it's apparent, and you're just like there's you know you have to save face. I don't think there's any point in being like too precious. You're like, this is just obviously a typo. I'm gonna fix it. And like sometimes you just fix it, and the editor will be like, "This is obviously a typo. Thank you for fixing it," and you'll never hear about it again. Sometimes it will come up in a pickup, and you'll just be like, "No, this was a mistake. I fixed it," and they'll say, "Oh, okay." Um, Sometimes especially if I'm working with the director for like someone like PRH, that director is usually marking like, hey, this was a mistake and we fixed it, so that they know. Sometimes every producer and every publisher works a little bit differently. um like you'll have an email thread chain, you'll be like, hey guys, just so you know, they got this name wrong. And not all books are created equal. Some have more mistakes than others, and for ones that kind of are known for having flubs and mistakes and like renaming a character halfway through a series, you just kind of shoot them an email saying, hey, consistency is king. This character's name got changed. We're going to keep it as it was 2 books ago. And you move forward.
yeah,
Because I mean, like the point at the end of the day is to make a good product, and baking mistakes into it doesn't serve the author, doesn't serve you. I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
So as I mentioned in the intro, I mean, you at this point you've narrated for again like the biggies out there, like Brandon Sanderson, Nora Roberts, David Baldacci. At what point did you started just narrating audiobooks, you were kind of working your way up to the first 100. Was there a certain title or was there a certain period where just you started kind of realizing, I don't know, like things have changed, like people are starting to really recognize my voice. People are starting to seek you. I mean, like what was the very first, quote unquote, big book that you did that really started changing things?
I I don't know if there was one. I mean, kind of to maybe Will Grayson, which was nominated for an Odyssey honor, which is a young adult award. Uh, I think my career kind of just like slowly built as I proved that I was dependable, that I had a certain approach, that I kind of went heavy into character and characterizations and had a kind of cinematic, fun kind of way of doing it. Uh, yeah, I don't know if that's really how audiobooks work. Like, I don't think. Kind of, we talked about this a little bit before we started taping. Like that, there's not really audiobook stardom per se. Like, you don't really get launched because even if you do that big Baldacci book, like the way the business is structured, it's for you as a narrator, it's just another book, another week in your calendar. Um, it doesn't really change much for you other
Okay, well,
than
how about this? Do you remember there like the first title that really kind of blew up in terms of, you go on Audible and you see some titles they might have a handful of ratings, and then other ones it's like, thousands of ratings. Just and sometimes it's for the author, but sometimes I feel like just certain audiobooks, whether it's the
oh,
algorithm
you know what,
or what,
honestly, for I think, at least personally for me, uh it would be Sandman Slim by Richard
I was
Kadrick.
gonna bring up Sandman Slim. Yeah, you had the perfect voice for Sandman Slim. I remember
I
listening to a couple of those early ones. Yes.
Yeah, it's so funny too because I go back and I listen to the early ones and I'm like, man, I sound like a baby. Because like over the years, like as he just went on all these, adventures fighting this, that, or the other, I kept kind of driving him deeper and driving him deeper until like when we got into book 10 or book 8, he was here and he was like, oh my, I'm not gonna curse, but like he was like, oh, I'm tired, I just want coffee. But then I go back and listen to the first one. It's like, hey, how are you? It's like here, kinda. And I'm like, oh man, no, that's not Sandman Slim. This is Sandman Slim. Uh,
Well,
yeah,
actually,
that
let me
was
ask you that regarding just series. So you've done a lot of different series. Obviously,
yeah,
Sandman Slim. When I had reached out to you, I remember listening to the Brandon Sanderson Reckoner trilogy. Well, I guess he did a few other things too. But I mean, you've done a lot of series. You've done the Warrior series.
yeah,
When you were approaching series, because obviously in theory you're doing a book and then like a year later you're doing the next
mhm.
book. So how do you and juggling all these different series, how do you do anything to try to make sure that the main character, the secondary tertiary characters, like that they're sounding alike book to book, so that people who are
Yeah,
listening to book 3 and they're listening to book 4 and all of a sudden it's like, oh, so and so sounds completely, I mean, is
yeah.
there anything that you do to try to make sure that there is that just
Continuity.
that like consistency?
Mhm. You save references, um, and you and yeah, like for Warriors, for example, where I think the producer who I work with on that is Mosaic Audio, and we have a really good workflow together. And they, are very diligent about saving my voice references. And I think we were looking at our folder of character voices for that book because for those at home who don't know, this is a series about feral cats who live in clans in the woods, and each clan has like 30 cats, and it spans generations, and each cat has multiple forms. They start as a kit, then they become an apprentice, then they become a warrior, and we evolve each character's voice through their ages. So the same character has anywhere oh then they become an elder, so the same character might have anywhere from 3 to 4 different voice prints. And yeah, we just have this library of character references, And like as we hit them, we're like, can you hit me with Blue Star again? Oh right, okay, she's very noble and up here and clean. Okay, great. I'm like, oh, can you hit me with Yellow Star again or Yellow Fang again? And she's gnarly and angry and here um and yeah, the short answer is help. With help, I have the help of the producers who are and an engineer. This is why I often insist on working with an engineer, so that like I can just focus on the book and the voice, and like they can, if I need a reminder, they just pipe it in to my headphones, and I'm like, right, we're there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, so regarding the Warriors, I mean, out of all the series you've done, that seems to be a very, very big series you've done, which is interesting. Just I feel like with children's books, and besides Harry Potter, like you would feel like the audiobooks don't, I guess, do as well, but those seem to have been very huge in terms of audio. Because I mean, I don't know. And again, well, I'm not a parent. You're a parent, but I mean, I always feel like usually with kids' books, it's usually the parents reading to the kids. You know, like the audiobook
yeah,
way is very interesting that they just, you go on Audible and there it's like a lot of reviews, that they've sold a crap ton of copies.
yeah. I
So
think
like, how did you get into, starting out? Because again, you've done so many different genres. You've
yeah,
done, again, we mentioned Nora Roberts, Brandon Sanderson, but then again, you've done the Warrior series, which you did and at some point I saw on Instagram, you basically, you kind of decided, okay, it's time for
yeah,
somebody else to come in.
yeah,
Which I know in terms of a series is always a little bit difficult. Like the Jack Reacher series, Dick Hill had done it for a long time before I went to Scott Brick. And as a
yeah.
listener, you get really used to it. It's always very jarring when you listen to like the
Sure.
first three books of a series, and all of a sudden, book four, it's someone brand new, and then they're in there for two books, and then somebody else comes in. Like that consistency is always key.
Yeah. Um, well, sorry, what's your question specifically
I
about
don't
the
really
Warriors?
remember what my question was anymore. But I mean, at what time? I mean, like, yeah, those were, you've done a lot of different books, and some have been very, very popular, obviously, for like a myriad of reasons. But like the Warrior books, I guess, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, like those are very special to you.
Yeah, yeah. It's speaking. My little warrior, who's sleeping on the top of my booth, is moaning in the background. um, uh, yeah, those books really caught me off guard with how emotional they were. I would get to the end of some of these arcs, and I would just be like, I'm crying. Like this. It's a very affecting series. Um, but yeah, I chose to kind of step back from those because I think we had done 60 or so, about 60 books, and I made sure to step away after finishing an arc. They're all in 6 book arcs. Um, but like they're all every book is told from or almost every book is told from 3 different points of view, and I'd say about 50% of them are a female point of view, and there's a great diversity of cats represented or of characters represented in this forest. And I know people really love this series, and for all the people who love the way I've decided to approach it, I know that there's people who probably have been like, yeah, I love the series, but can't listen to the audio because I don't know, I don't like the way he does it. And I just kind of felt like I wanted to open it up to kind of just different interpretations, maybe a female voice, which I was glad to see is the direction they went in after me. Um, to just kind of bring open this series up to like more perspectives on approaching material.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, so for people who can see, you have a lot of awards. Probably you have more awards than are like, back in that corner. Um, but and I don't think a lot of audiobook narrators they do win what was it? Earphone awards and you get
yeah.
nominated for Audies or whatever else. You were nominated for a Grammy.
Well, I think what was that? What was that for? Was that Charlotte's Web? I guess I was a part of, or there was
I
something
don't know.
else.
I just took it off your website. It says a Grammy nomination, so that
It's true.
seems
I
pretty
think
wild.
it might be Charlotte's Web, which was headed by Meryl Streep. I played Templeton, the rat,
Oh, so
and
this is one of those like multi full cast type things.
multi-full cast type
Still,
thing.
still need to be a
Um,
part of that.
was there, or maybe there was another one because I remember a lot of people have been like, I just got nominated for a Grammy, and I was like, well, not really. um, so there might have been another one where I was like, you know what, I feel okay saying, yeah, I got nominated for a Grammy, or I just got over it and was like, no, it sounds too good to pass up. I'm going to say I was nominated for a Grammy.
Well,
Um,
regardless, on there you mentioned though one of your favorites was the Odyssey honor. Specifically, why is that one like sticking out to you
well,
as
I was like, it's YA, and like YA is not a genre I get to do very much anymore. I think in part because I've just started to become more associated with like grittier, hard hitting, hard scrabble kind of stuff and kind of lower stuff. And my voice has changed a little bit as I've aged. And also, you do want a greater degree of authenticity. You know, like I'm middle aged now. Like I got 3 kids. My perspective is not, in line with what kids these days, how kids these days are thinking. So I'm not really the right person to be doing YA anymore. But it's what I loved about it when I was doing more of it is like it was just so earnest and so unafraid to examine things that hurt and like and complicated emotions and things that kind of adult literature often avoids, like especially in genre lit. Not always in genre lit, but like sometimes it's like it gets a little hardened, a little defensive sometimes, and like YA has none of that. It's just this kind of like open, beaming wound, and it's just like very cathartic to do, or was very cathartic to do YA. And Will Grayson, the one that I think got an honor, was like just a beautiful book. I think it was co-written by John Green and David Levithan. I co-narrated that with Nick Podell, with Laura Grafton from Brilliance Audio directing, and it was also I think one of my first big award nominations. I was still relatively new to audiobook narration, and yeah, it was just I think a special one. Um, yeah,
well, let's talk about the multicast narrations or like sometimes you might have maybe just two narrators to a project. Does that change at all the type of prep or the type of things? Are you looking at just really your sections, or do you want to kind of be aware of kind of what's happening when you're not on the page? Or is it still kind of the same prep that you would do with just if you were just the single narrator?
yeah, it's similar prep. It again, it kind of depends on the text and how much overlap there is. Obviously, you wanna align the way you approach shared characters with your other narrators so that you don't just completely go this way when they actually went this way. You don't give them a big deep voice when actually like the other narrator went kind of high with it or cool with it. So you need to align your character choices. Um, and actually, I think it's an interesting thought is occurring to me in the moment and that's generally just like the kind of like tone and approach and aligning tone and approach to the whole thing, which I don't know if I've always, I don't know if I've necessarily worried about too much in the past because generally when you're doing multi narrator, multi point of view, you have a point of view and you're speaking as that character, and you don't really need to align your style with the other narrator because you're playing your character, even if it's a close third, like third person. You don't uh, you don't really need to worry too much about aligning your style, but I don't know. I'm wondering to myself, I'm like, maybe I should worry more about that. Like, making sure I'm not coming in really hot with a very present read while the other person is kind of being more literary and presentational. Uh, yeah, maybe I should Uh,
No, I get what you're saying. At the same time, I kind of feel like at least somebody on the other side who is listening to, depending on how those narrations or those point of views are broken up throughout the novel, it could be
yeah,
jarring doing
sure.
a couple chapters from so and so, and then all of a sudden someone else comes in, and then because usually, like, especially if you're doing like, say, a psychological suspense where you're like the male narrator and then you have the female narrator.
Mhm.
That female narrator, though, is also narrating like kind of like that male character from their point of view,
Mhm.
and kind of vice versa. And then so yeah, I mean,
So
it
it
is
gets kind
always
of hard to
interesting.
glom
Like,
on to like who's my character, like what is the voice of this character because you've got kind of multiple versions of it.
yeah,
Yeah, I think some people don't like that. Like just kind of categorically don't really care for multi narrator reads for that reason, and some people find it kind of really energizing and good. Uh, yeah, I
yeah,
I think I'm okay with it not working for everybody. It's kind of one of the things I like about audiobooks is it's super personal. It's super subjective, and you know, for however many people love the way I approach something, there's a group of people who can't stand it, and that's just fine because I think that's true for every narrator, just about. And I find it very freeing to just kind of knowing that I think the best thing I can do is just bring my take and my approach and bring myself and filter it through me as honestly as I can. Um,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe more of a question for producers and publishers of what feedback they get generally about deciding to approach something in a multi-narrator way as opposed to a single narrator read.
Yeah.
Um, you
And
probably
then
get
what's
it.
it called? And then
Yeah,
what's the name of it? I always forget those types of books. The new Harlan Coben and Reese Witherspoon audiobook did that, where it was, you have the main narrator, but then for certain dialogue, they would then kind of splice in a
yeah,
different actor instead of it's just the one, which in the past, I remember listening to a book. Obviously, I think it was one of the early David Baldacci ones. I think is when they first started experimenting with that. I
yeah.
found it very jarring. I wasn't a fan of it. I thought that they did it pretty well in the in the Coben Witherspoon one, where you basically are just kind of like reading lines of dialogue that are going to be like edited into someone else's
Right.
narration. What specifically is that called again? I always forget.
I don't know if there's
I feel like there's some type of term for it, but maybe that's a but maybe I'm getting that mixed up because I know
I
there's
mean like
like,
like full cast. It's probably full. It's like read by a
yeah, I
full.
guess it's a full cast type
Right.
thing.
It's like
But anyway,
visual, for example.
I don't want to keep much more of your time. Just a few other quick questions.
Yeah.
What about languages? Do you speak any type of languages? Like if you come to like a certain title that like has a character speaking like are there languages that you feel comfortable maybe trying to even kind of like getting through there, or other ones where you're just like there's no way I'm going to like I'm like make this language sound like right.
Right. I Yeah, it's inevitable that in any number of books, some of the characters might fire off some lines of dialogue in another language. Um, I feel pretty confident with Spanish. Uh, I'm not fluent, but reading it, I understand how to read it, and French to a certain extent. Uh, I did one. It was I think the series was called like the last coordinate or the coordinate series. Really fun YA kind of caper thing, very kind of like Dan Brown esque about tracking down an alien race through artifacts and whatever. And they found a lot of them. And go, man, there were so many. They'd go to Italy and then they'd go to Norway and or Iceland and like Snorri Sturluson and like trying to break my brain open to understand how to do Icelandic L's and D's
Mm,
was like it took because there'd be lines, sometimes like multiple lines just in all Icelandic, and I would just have to listen to Forvo word for word and kind of like repeat and repeat. Put now do 3 words, now do 4 words, now do 5 words, stringing it together to say it phonetically to the best of my abilities. That was rough, but a fun challenge. um, yeah.
When you are recording, and again, I understand after so many hundreds of books and years, what year did you say you started again? When was your first title?
I think 2008, maybe 2009.
Okay, so we're coming up close to you being like 2 decades on.
Yeah.
So are you like when you're working on a book, how long does it typically take you? And usually for me, I know this is kind of depends on the narrator because I feel like some narrators might go a little bit quicker than other ones, but usually like every 10,000 words is about an hour. So like it's like 100,000 word novel could be about a 10-hour audiobook, give or take. How long does it typically take you to go over, a 100,000 word novel to get that record, like in terms of like finished hour? Like I guess like how much time in your
What's my
booth?
ratio?
What's that?
What's my ratio?
Well, like how much time in the booth does it take you to get that like per finished hour?
Um, Again, it kind of depends on the book. Like right now, I'm working on a really fun one by Evan S. Porter for Random House called uh, "Last Time for Everything," uh, and it flows pretty naturally. And also, Penguin Random House does a straight record, non-destructive record, where you're not stopping to punch. Uh, you're just kind of, if you make a mistake, you just go back and you
Hmm.
just keep going, and an editor will clean it all up afterwards, and the director's kind of marking the script up. That can move really quickly. Like I'd say usually it's a 6 hour day. You start at 10 and you go till either 4:30 or 5. Is that a 6 hour day? Uh, and take a break for lunch, take little tens here and there as needed. Uh, on like a good focused day where things are moving and you're locked in, and you've got it kind of all under you, and it's not too technical a book, like where you can kind of just go, you can hit three finished hours. uh I'd say I usually schedule to do 2 finished hours a day. So like a 10-hour audiobook, I'll usually allot 5 days for, and sometimes you'll finish early, and sometimes you'll be like, you know what, this one was just kind of like technical for a couple of reasons. We need to tack on an extra day. Um, yeah. And that's
Yeah.
also, I can go way faster if I'm working with an engineer. If I'm like probably undiagnosed ADD. So if I'm trying to do it on my own, like it'll take forever, because not only am I kind of fighting against my motivation to not lock myself in a tiny room all day, I'm also kind of a perfectionist, and I start editing as I go and like perfecting all my punches, and it ends up taking just way longer. Um,
Yeah. And so I mentioned before, like essentially the manuscript is what you have to read, essentially word for word. Are there any pet peeves that you've come across having done hundreds of audiobooks? Like for me as a listener, um, I, if someone has two characters talking and there are speech tags in every single line of dialogue, like that just
he
drives me
said, she
nuts. Because at least
said,
when I'm reading it, I can just skip over it with my eyes. But listen, I mean, you have to, you
yeah,
as the narrator have to. He said, she said, he said, she said. I mean, I don't know. Like, are there any
yeah.
things that usually like you get to and you're like you kind of like inwardly groan or roll your eyes and you're like, oh God. And especially for any like writers out there to be aware of, because I feel like probably a lot of writers don't really, maybe they're not audiobook fans, maybe they don't really think about like the rhythm and flow of like how
Right.
their words should be, or like like
Mhm.
their dialogue is maybe clunky, and just something to kind of be aware of, to be more aware of, I guess, when they're writing.
I would say, well, first of all, I think I'm kind of more interested in learning the things that what your pet peeves are and the things that bother you, to just kind of take into account, because it's always good to just kind of hear the perspective of the listener. I wouldn't
Right, but
say,
for me it's more of just the manuscript itself, not so much the narrator. I mean, you guys are basically doing what you can with the text, but sometimes the text might, you know
yeah, I'd say
there's nothing to be
generally,
changed there.
very generally speaking, sometimes I get frustrated with the kind of preciousness of production, like the kind of purists where it's every word exactly. I sometimes, I think emotionally want to push things more towards the audio than the book, of being like, this is, it's like listening and reading, they're both equal, but audio does different things and can do different things. And it's just like not necessary to have sort of stuff. I don't think, you know, for most projects, you don't have the bandwidth. Like, you're not allowed the latitude to make changes that are that aggressive. You can't edit the text. You can't get rid of the attribution, except for with Brilliance Audio. We did these Catherine Coulter, JT Ellison
JT Ellison, yeah.
books, where I co-narrated them with Renee Rodman, and we would sit together and go through the whole book, and all the male dialogue would be me, all the female dialogue would be her. Sometimes if the perspective changed, we would, even mid-chapter, sometimes we'd take over narration from one another. And in that, we were given the latitude to make calls of, say, like, we don't need a he said there. It's me. Obviously he said it. Like, they're gonna hear that. And that's really fun. I get frustrated when there's like clear like audio cues and indications where it's like, he said, the demon said in the voice of 1,000 souls, and you're just like, come on, can we get some reverb? And they're like, no. It's like, just why not? Like, because I find most authors are writing for a book to be present, to exist in the moment it's happening. Writing, I don't want to say like a movie, but kind of like everything on the page is real and happening in real time. And I know there's the kind of like, just be the storyteller, but like very few authors actually write like a storyteller. Like, and so I sometimes get frustrated when clearly what's on the page is a very present, lived performance, or needs to be, and then like something flies in that is just like inherently literary that you just can't make be that way. I don't know. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on people, like sometimes I'll see people on Instagram, share screenshots of, we're listening to this audiobook, and then you'll see there and it's like point 0.5 speed, 2 point speed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how are you even like, I'll listen to podcasts that,
Slowing it
sometimes
down.
really, we're like a fast whatever else, because it's just, people talking or whatever else. But I don't know, for like, at least with audiobooks, and maybe I'm a little bit too precious about it, but I feel like, this is a performance. It is like watching a movie at really, really, really like fast speed. And I kind of feel like, especially for you guys who spend a lot of time, prepping and doing whatever else and in the booth, but to then have somebody listen to an audiobook at
At
like
like two times
at
speed.
like 2x speed. It's like, Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Uh, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I think this is for the everything we do is for the listener, and if they can pick up what I'm putting down at 2x speed, then more power to them. Like I get it. It's like I think there's just a difference of like, when everything's been stripped away and there's just a voice, your brain can just crank faster sometimes than that performance can. Like, if they were there watching you do it, they'd probably hang on every word and be, but they're not. It's disembodied. You're gone. And so like your brain is able to process the information faster than how it's been given. And like, if speeding it up helps you stay in it, like, great. I've got no issue with that. I don't feel like, how dare you mess with my pauses.
Yeah. Are you able to be more picky nowadays with the projects you take on, or is it just kind of, work is work if you get offered it, or I guess I'm assuming you still like, how many auditions do you find yourself doing? Um,
Uh, it varies. I think today I sent off an audition for one. I've got two more sitting in the hopper, or sitting on deck. Uh, Most of I do get a lot of straight offers at this point, which is nice. Uh, I don't have any problem with auditioning, because a lot of the time the publisher doesn't have the final say, and they need to run it by the author, which is great. I think the author should have a say in it, and like, yeah, like they need to hear you, and if they don't want you, it's not personal. You're just not the right match for what they're going for. Uh, yeah, um, I'd say there's more offers than there are auditions, which I'm very
Nice.
fortunate for.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And then on top of the narration, you still do the voice acting. You still do a little like acting. I don't know if I should call it acting, but like, you were actually like, in front of the camera at
yeah.
times. Do you like, I guess, like, how do you squeeze all that in with
Uh,
everything else? Because I'm sure like
right.
the narration keeps you busy.
It does. Right now, I've limited everything. I've focused everything down to voiceover, which doesn't always mean audiobooks. Like I've been doing more and more video games, which is a lot of fun, and more dubbing uh, for like Netflix and Disney Plus and whatever, which is also a lot of fun. It's kind of like playing Guitar Hero, but like for acting, uh, and like commercials, obviously.
Yeah,
And
what are
like,
some recent on your website? You mentioned Whole Foods, Wild Turkey, Honda
yeah,
Civic,
yeah.
T-Mobile. Um, what was some like recent commercials people might kind of because I've had that conversation with like Brittany Presley where, she's done a lot of like, commercial work as well. And unless you reckon, you know what I mean, unless you're like an audiobook listener and kind of recognize some voices, you might not even like realize it.
Yeah.
What are some like recent ones that, people might be people might have seen or heard?
Uh, well, I guess during the during the pandemic, you were listening to me tell you about Whole Foods for 2 years. Um,
It was helpful.
I never thought I'd be hyping my commercials in this interview. I was the voice of what's it called? Flea and tick protection. Uh, oh God.
Oh yeah, what's the name of that?
Uh,
Oh.
for like 2.5, 3 years. PetSmart or I don't. Oh gosh, the big one that for flea collars and flea
Mm.
medications. uh, yeah, which are great. I mean, commercials are sort of like one of the only things anymore in voiceover that are truly lucrative. Um,
And do you ever have like the TV's on the background and one of your commercials comes on? Like, do your kids ever recognize your voice?
no, I even like I play Green Arrow on Bat Wheels, which is like a preschool age show, and like I've like tried to sit my kids down to be like, Daddy's in this one. Like you watching, and it just passes right by, no recognition, and I'm like, all right, well, um, so no, they haven't recognized. But yeah, I saw the Whole Foods ones, like because my wife and I watch Top Chef, and so the Whole Foods commercials would roll on the back end of all of those streamers, and they'd be like, it's me. uh, Yeah, which is kind of fun. But now what's interesting too is I'll like I'll see commercials go by that I auditioned for, and I'll be like, that's the way they went. That's what they were looking for when they said like relatable. Like, all right, well, I was never gonna get that one. um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, so we are coming up with the hour. I don't want to take up
yeah.
too much more of your time, but I am curious, do you like do you read for pleasure at this point, or like reading is just work? You're not able to kind of turn your brain off, and like anytime you read a book, it's like you just feel like you're prepping.
Uh, Not a whole lot these days. What's the last book I read and actually finished? Oh no, you know what? I didn't finish it. I've still got. I put it down like months ago with like one more chapter to go. It was *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, uh, and I think I've got Cameron Crowe's memoirs sitting on my bedside table at the moment. Uh, not very deep into it. No, because by the time we get the kids to bed, like after a long day of reading, then we get the kids to bed, and then we'll my wife and I will have dinner and kind of just like chill out, veg out, maybe watch something, and then sometimes after all that's said and done, I'll need to pop back up here and do a bunch of auditions for video games or animation or commercials or whatever's waiting, and then uh, or I'll have I narrate for Apple News a lot, so I'll have like an article the next morning that I will throw up on the TV and just kind of read that to get a sense of to try to kind of glom the vibe from it, so I can get an approach starting to marinate.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
is there anything that you've like watched recently, like movies, TV, or like anything you really enjoyed that you'd want people to be aware of?
like just as a person, like
Yeah, just
doing
as,
content. Yeah,
just as a human person.
sure. I as I've gotten older, and especially as have had kids, I'm definitely lean more towards escapism than like hard hitting drama. Um, so like Last of Us, I appreciate it. I respect it. Uh, I think it's wonderful, but like I can't deal with it. I can't deal with it. So like I also like am trying to do more and more animation. So I try to make a point of seeing what's out there and watching animation. Invincible is an incredible kind of comic book animation that's like very much for adults. Uh, that's just fun. It's funny. If there isn't some aspect of humor, Hacks. We'll watch things like Hacks. Uh, what's the one with Kate Hudson that by Mindy Kaling that
Oh, running point.
Running Point? That's fun.
Yeah.
Uh, um, yeah, I feel like I've run out of kind of good animations for the moment.
Yeah.
And I
Have you watched Side Effects?
no, what side effects?
It is on HBO Max. I think you
Okay.
might dig it. I forget who the creator was because they did other stuff, but it people who have seen it really love it, and I think it's gotten really great reviews. But it's one of those things too. It's not as big as like Invincible.
Right.
Yeah, Side Effects. I think
Oh,
you'll really
common
like.
side effects.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Yes,
common side effects. Yes,
I
yes.
love common side effects. Yeah, it's fantastic. I think I actually auditioned to be the main guy. Uh, and like, but the main guy is great. So like,
Yeah.
no worries. Yeah, I love that show. That's really that one would be so easily adapted to live action. Not that you need to, not that that legitimizes it or anything, but like, uh, that's a really cool show.
Yeah.
Common
So,
side
all
effect.
right. Last thing I want to ask you, we talked about, were there any other titles that you've done over the 500 plus titles that still have stuck with you
Mm,
that, maybe did not get the love that you felt they needed? Is like, because as I'm sure you
yeah,
probably, people might come up to you and be like, "Oh, I really enjoyed your performance on this book." And you might be like, "Thank you.
which one? Oh,
I don't even
thanks.
remember, recording that." But are there certain ones that have like stuck with you after a certain amount of time for whatever reason? And like maybe like why those maybe stuck with you after, the
Yeah.
hundreds plus
Um,
titles.
there's a few for sure. Um, they're probably slightly more recent. Daniel Quinn's The Story of B is sort of like an essay dressed up as a narrative. That messed me up for a while. Um, I'm sort of blanking on pulling up the kind of themes and what it's about, but that one was cool. I just had the pleasure of doing a book for Orly Moskowitz called I hope I'm allowed to say yeah, it's online. Uh, Country People by Daniel Mason. It's just so good. Um, I feel like more and more like with like adult literature, like humor somehow evaporates or disappears, and like this one is just so funny, and the prose are just alive, and like I've never been more pleased to see an absurd run-on sentence. Like it's just extremely well written. I'm really excited. I just finished that one last week. I'm really excited for that to come out. Uh, um, oh man, I had a couple more on the top of my head. Oh yeah, I don't know a whole lot about it. I got thrown into it really last minute, but it's part of the like Shatter Me universe by Tahira Mafi, and I just play one perspective Warner, but like I was really struck by how how rich and dense her like the and present the emotional reality of the characters was. Like I got in there and I was like, oh my gosh, like every line I've got to make sure I like nail the shift and the change of what's happening here, which was fun because being an actor first and foremost, I respond to psychology and emotion first and foremost, and that one surprised me at how much I enjoyed doing that. I haven't I haven't seen anybody being like, "Whoa, like what a fun performance," but I really liked doing it, and like because there was room to like just get like nasty at times with it. Um, that was cool. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Sandman Slim is just like always. Anytime I can slip into James Stark's skin is is a pleasure.
And he brought that back, right? Because I think like he said that there was a final book, but then he brought another book. Has that one
So
come out yet?
I think he's got one more.
Yeah.
He there's 12. He took a break, and number 13 felt like a good number for him, and I think that's
Mm.
gonna be it. Um, which is sad, but uh, but also cool. I mean, I
I
think
mean, 13, sometimes some series books don't go more
yeah,
than two books. So
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I know there's things that I'm not thinking of that are just fantastic reads, but yeah, those are the ones that are coming to mind at the moment. And
yeah.
Warriors, of course, will be with me forever and always. My cats. Um,
Yeah. All right.
yeah,
If people wanted to stalk you online, where's the best way to do that?
I don't have much of a footprint. I try to limit it to just one. So I'm on Instagram as at MacLeod Andrews actor, and that's my kind of one little like, hey, I'm here. Uh, but it's always nice. Uh, every once in a while, people will reach out just to say like, "Hey, really enjoyed your performance," and that's just about the best thing that I think a narrator can hear. So, um, yeah, I do my best to respond in a timely fashion, though sometimes it gets away from me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
All right, McLeod. So I appreciate your time. I know you're a very busy man,
likewise.
so thank you so much for chatting. And everybody, go to Audible or wherever you get your fine audiobooks, and go listen to a bunch of the titles that McLeod mentioned or narrated. Definitely, I would definitely say, in the sea of vast narrators, you're definitely one of my favorites, and I listen to a lot of
Oh,
audiobooks. So
thank you so much.
thank you again for making time to talk, and yeah, we'll see everybody next time.